7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Live from the Rob Christensen Radio Network Satellite Studio, it's Jim and Rob Overanalyze the Movies.
Have you seen any good movies lately? How about great ones? When was the last time a movie made you cry, or laugh, or made you feel pensive, or patriotic, or too scared to turn out the lights? More than any other art form, movies can transport us to impossible places, into the mind of a madman, into the heart of a marriage, or to the far edges of a distant galaxy.
Well, hello, everybody. And as you can tell from that kickoff, we've got a great show for you tonight. And you're actually going to meet that gentleman soon. But before we get started, before we get to the meat of the show, like I said, we got a special treat for you. But I think we need to start, as we always do, with the man, the myth, the legend, my co-host, Mr. Jim Chliboyko. How are you doing, sir?
I'm shy. I'm just kidding. Where's my I think my microphone slipped off. Okay, there we go. Never mind.
just a bit of wrestle.
Yeah.
Here we are, Winnipeg's public access.
There we go.
How are you, my friend?
Good. Yeah.
Excellent.
A little bit waiting for the rain to start because it's gotten very humid all of a sudden up here in the second story. So, it's very warm. I don't know. How about you? What about your neighborhood? Is it? I got the fan working here, so.
Yeah. I'm in a basement. I'm in a basement bar.
There we go.
I'm fine. All right, Jim. Yeah, what do you think? Maybe we should just get right into it. We do have a special guest.
We do.
All right. Let me take over the screen for a sec. I'll give him a proper introduction, folks. As I said before, we've got a great show for you tonight. We are going to be asking whether or not a potentially classic movie is. If it holds up. And we're also going to be taking a look at, or we're also going to be talking to a gentleman I've sung the praises of his book before. And let me pull that up. The Screenwriter's Taxonomy, a roadmap to collaborative storytelling. It's a go-to reference for me. As you saw from the screen there, from that end, that's actually him on his, I guess it's called Wondrium now, but it used to be the Great Courses Plus, How to Appreciate Great Films. And without much further ado, let me and you and if we can all give a big welcome to Mr. Eric Williams, Professor Eric Williams of Ohio University, and I believe he also wrote a Columbo, which I'm hoping Jim, who's going to actually interview him, will get into just a touch. Because that's just so cool. Eric, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. It's really great to be on the show.
Excellent. Well, yeah, Jim, I'll leave it to you, and Eric, and I'll get some other housekeeping stuff. I've been somewhat remiss, and go for it.
Yeah, so we recently, we've been talking a lot about genre. Specifically, there was a YouTuber challenge where they said, take a look at these 10 genres of movie and tell us what's your favorite. And sort of, it went, and then ask a friend and see if they can contribute. And, it's all fun and that kind of thing.
Sure. Get a conversation going.
Yeah, and just have everyone, and everyone's got different selections too, just to see what sort of, it's like a first date. What's your favorite movie? It's those seminal sort of questions. Yeah. But we were sort of looking at the idea of genre, and there's a lot of articles online, a lot of listicle type articles that basically claim that anything is genre. And I wanted to start off with you being a professor of film, what do people get wrong about genre?
Well, in some ways, you're right. Everything is a genre. If that's how we're going to use the word genre, then let's just use the word thing. What's your favorite movie thing? Oh, I like animation. What's your favorite movie thing? I like silent movies. Oh, I like movies about drama, right?
Yeah.
So in that instance, if that's how we're using it, then I mean, you can organize back when they had video stores, you can organize your video store any way you want, and if you want to call those genres, go for it. But as a professor, what I ran into a number of years ago is, how do you have really specific conversations with students about what they're trying to accomplish? And I just found the word genre was too broad, because I'd say, great, what genre do you want to write? I'm going to write a comedy. Great. Like, is that the end of the conversation? It's like, no, that's kind of the beginning of the conversation. Okay, now that I know your film's going to be funny, how do we go to the next level? How do we get deeper into that? Is it going to be a comedy romance, a rom-com? Okay, that's going to be different than a war comedy or a crime comedy. And so then I started looking at these different layers, and the big thing that came to my mind is, what do you need? What defines a genre? And it's one of the questions I ask my students. I say, okay, let me give you an example. Right? I've got a genre in mind, and it takes place out in the desert, and the characters ride horses, and they protect a town, and there's a lot of conversation about freedom and individuality, and there's a clash between the old and the new. Like, what genre am I talking about?
Yeah. Well, Western,
right?
yeah.
Or Western, right? Okay, so you do the same thing, but you do the same thing now. Now do it for me for drama.
Situation where there's the basic conflict. There's multiple characters. I mean, everything's about conflict, but multiple characters that may be trying to overcome one or two or three or multiple challenges, whether they're emotional, mental, romantic, what have you.
Okay, you just described MASH.
Yeah.
And that's not a drama. That's a comedy.
Yeah, that's a good. I was sort of wondering how much mood plays into that, but anyway, continue.
Well, but I think that's kind of it. I mean, I look at it. I think that there is about a dozen genres that identify atmosphere, character, and story, and from that, all other stories are possible, but there's only like 12 of them. Everything else is not genre. Everything else is something else. So drama and comedy are super important. But I look at it kind of like the taxonomy of all living things, right? It's like animal, mineral, or vegetable, or animal, or plant, or animal, right? Comedy or drama. And once we can kind of divvy that up, then there's all these subcategories. But you kind of have to start with drama or comedy and say, okay, it's comedy. But that it gets even more complicated than that, because there's a slew of comedies.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you can have bathroom comedy or dark comedy. You can have comedy of errors or slapstick or surreal comedy. Right? And then there's a whole litany of dramas. So if I'm talking to a student and I'm trying to say, okay, what are you going to make? What are you going to write? And their answer is a drama. That whittles it down to like half the planet. And then the next conversation is, great, what kind of drama?
Yeah. So
anyway, that's kind of where it all started, and how I sort of started to look at all that.
Yeah. And when I was answering the questions too, I'm a big, I like we've recently done in terms of the how does it hold up. We've done Bowfinger, and we've done several other ones, broader ones. But I know there's some of my favorites are like Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, but also I like Wes Anderson. So I was thinking, if I wanted to include good old Wes on this list, where would he fit in? And do I ultimately chose comedy, although it's not, on its face, it's maybe not, everyone's idea of a comedy. There's some laughs and things like that, but yeah, it does get tricky. And so we were thinking that comedies and dramas may be a bit too broad, but you're saying that's sort of the starting point, that from where you go when you're talking about genre.
Yeah, I think so, because I think that comedy and drama are a part of every other genre. Right? I mean, you can have a Wes Anderson movie is comedic, but there's also typically something else to it. And if it's a crime, or if it's a romance, or if it's a thriller, that is the genre. But the Wes Anderson comedy influences that. Rob, you seem to be itching.
I did my little housekeeping. I've caught up. I'm wondering, regarding comedy, drama, it just doesn't tell you anything other than maybe tone. Comedy, well, okay, I'm going to laugh a bit. Drama, okay, there'll be more tears than laughs. That's a really gross oversimplification, but it really speaks to tone, where genre, going back to your book, I'm going to got an idea of atmosphere. It's going to talk about a lot of potential storylines. You say science fiction, I have a clear image in my head. That's whereas when you say comedy to me, I'm like, okay, well, there'll be laughs, but that's all it tells me.
Yes, completely.
Okay, wanted to make sure I really kind of.
And then you can dial that tone in, right? You can say, what kind of comedy is it, right? Are we going dark comedy? Are we going for bathroom comedy, that sort of stuff? Or how serious is it? If it's dramatic with funny characters, right, you're in the dramedy area. If you're dark, or tragedy, we know that we're just going to be weeping from midpoint on.
Yeah. It's the two masks, the sad mask and the happy mask, and I guess everything kind of goes from there. For a visual.
I mean, what drives me nuts about the list is if drama's on your list, then does that mean that any serious movie fits under that? Because how can you have, is Godfather crime? No, Godfather's my favorite drama. Oh, really? It's not your favorite crime movie? It's your favorite drama? So here, one of the genres that I feel is out there, that I think a lot of people think of when they think of drama, is the life genre. I look at it as like slice of life or day in the life. And to me, what most genres do is they take a story and they make it super hyper, right? It's like big crime, or it's a big Western, or we're going to war, we're all falling in love. Like there's these big events. But a lot of really great movies are about the small events in our lives. And they speak more to the human condition. And I think a lot of people look at those movies and they say, Manchester by the Sea, oh, that's a great drama. Because that's what they're relating to, is the dramatic elements in a normal person's life that make it a story. But I look at that, if we say that is a life genre, then you can have the life genre. It's the day in the life of a guy who inherited his cousin or his nephew.
I'm thinking, Jim, Another Round, which is very much a slice of life, I think. Yeah. Just that following those guys in their ridiculous drinking experiment, but...
Yeah, and I was, what was on the other night was Fruitvale Station. Now, of course, that's not, that's based around an act of violence, but a lot of the lead up to it is very slice of lifey, just except for the fact that the reason the whole movie was made in the first place, just the sort of delivery of it.
But that's a really good point, Jim. I mean, so this is the other thing I talk with students a lot when we talk about genre, is just because a crime is committed in the movie doesn't make it a crime movie. And so the an example I like to use is Bull Durham.
Oh yeah.
Now a lot of people say that Bull Durham is a sports movie because they're baseball players.
Mhm.
But tell me what happens in a sports movie. I mean, what are most sports movies about?
An individual game or the course of that a season, how it progresses, I guess.
Okay, but usually it also builds towards the big game. I mean, it's not about a season where we win or lose, like we're kind of in the middle of the pack. It's like, no, we were the underdogs. We've got to beat the big team, right? Or anyway, the rhythm of a sports movie is typically competition between two or more teams or individuals, right? And it's all, the story is about people getting better at their sport or not,
Mhm.
and learning through competition.
Yeah.
That does not happen in Bull Durham. Bull Durham is a romance, right? Because there's no big game at the end of Bull Durham. They go on the road, I think.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I can't even. Oh well, the Durham Bulls.
Is that their name?
I think that's actually the team name. I was going to say, don't even remember the team name.
Well,
Who cares?
and who did they play?
Yeah.
Like the big sports thing that I remember was they turned on the sprinklers and rained out the game so that they could go drinking, I guess, or more, or something like that. But what it really is it's a romance between. It's a romantic triangle.
Yeah. Yes.
And so that movie is actually a romance because it has the atmosphere and the characters and the story about people falling into and out of love. It's just placed in the world of baseball, but that doesn't make it a sports movie.
It's sort of like Ted Lasso. I was surprised at how little soccer there was actually in it the first season anyway. But I mean, that's it's TV rather than movie. But
would you say, though, you look at that one, that it's funny you mentioned that, Jim. That was exactly what I was thinking. It was almost there you see the sport, like the combo genre, like you can have a science fiction romance or, like you can have these combinations. And I think Ted Lasso is both a sports movie. He does like some of those sports movie elements, a coach taking a team that isn't unified, a star with too much ego, a player who needs to be boosted. They have all those sport movie tropes. But at the same time, there's also the outside of the game, learning about life and moving on, even leaving sport, which isn't usually a sports movie. Like, if memory serves, Bull Durham, even part of that was Kevin Costner's character kind of having to accept that he is at the end of his career. And he's really just trying to squeeze out a few more games,
Yeah,
Like,
but that's a sports element too. I mean, there's the whole sports micro genre of the last games or the going over the hill and you have any games left in you kind of theme.
Yeah. We got a question from the chat here. Eric, maybe you can help us answer that age-old question on whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Just because it's at Christmas, does that make it a Christmas movie? I have an opinion on this, but we have a subject matter expert.
yes, yeah.
Okay, I would say kind of, and here's why. So we have a very limited interview time. But in my book, I talk about, I think that there are genres, macro genres, and micro genres. And the more you talk about it, the more specificity you get. So Die Hard is an action movie. But Die Hard is an action movie that has a macro that is holiday movie. And the reason why it's important is there are elements in the movie that use Christmas to tell the story. So, right, if I'm remembering correctly, the reason why he's back in his ex-wife's life is he's coming home for Christmas. And she's at a Christmas party. And one of the reasons why I think the limo driver is so nice to him is because they bonded over Christmas gifts or something like that. And so the writers are actually using Christmas thematically and narratively within the story. So I wouldn't say that it's a Christmas movie as a genre, but it's certainly a action movie that has an element of holiday, which would be its macro genre, and then the micro genre is Christmas. So if I'm working with you, if we're writers and we're talking and I'm saying, okay, you set it at Christmas, how are we going to work that into the story? Is that really important? Or is that just another day that we're just using to paint the background? So I would say, yes, it's a Christmas movie, but I would not say that Christmas is a genre. Christmas movie is a genre. Christmas movie is a micro genre. And what Die Hard really is an action movie.
Yeah. Action with a hint of. With
a hint of Christmas.
You know, the stew is action, but there's some Christmas spice in there to enhance the movie, not just as it's not a BS ingredient just to make your recipe slightly different from the next one.
Yes. I like the cooking analogy.
A couple of candy canes in the stew there. I think they're melting. I don't know.
Taste it. Yeah, they're melting.
Just quickly, there's a couple of questions that struck me when I was reading up on. I'm always trying to get a sense of film noir, and I know film noir specifically is about atmosphere, but I've seen some descriptions that are very specific, saying the lead is usually a detective of some sort, usually a male, often wears a hat like a fedora and an overcoat. Like, and that struck me as being a little bit too firm. Am I wrong about that? Like, is it?
Can I add a quick enhancement to that question before you answer, Eric?
Yeah.
Like, my understanding of the history of film, it's kind of like Art Deco. Like, it wasn't like a movement or we are going to make film noir now. It was almost like a multiple influences and even economic. Like the Hays Code is starting to fade. We can make some cheap movies that really push the envelope. And, well, I got one light. I could afford one light. Let's make this work.
Let's make atmosphere with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that's the only thing I wanted to add before just Jim, like getting a free film studies class, Jim.
Well, Jim,
we're just going to work the list of film and media profs who've got a book out.
Well, I have to compliment you, Jim, on putting your finger on the question I was probably the most uncomfortable about answering in the history of any question you could ask me. And here's why: because noir is such it's a well-studied topic, but it's also gone through so many different iterations. I mean, I think noir used to be a genre. I think you could talk about atmosphere and character and story, and they built hundreds of movies on the backs of those ideas, and a lot of it does have to do with the atmosphere and the dark shadows. Obviously, that's where the name comes from. What's the last noir movie that's been out?
That's a good question.
It seems anything with like a downbeat ending or slightly, unlikable characters is considered a noir. Gone Girl, noir.
What was that Mickey Rourke one where that's going back a few years with Lisa Bonet? Is that, I mean,
Angel Heart.
Yes. I mean, something in terms of heaviness and atmosphere and that sort of thing, with a little bit of a supernatural element, which I don't think is maybe super typical. But that's a good question. I don't know. And if it was, was it homage or was it, a genuine attempt to
neo noir?
Yeah, right. Neo noir.
Like that's.
They had the California noir. They were calling like the whole Miami Vice kind of look. It was almost like the opposite of noir. You do it with bright lights instead of shadows. Usual Suspects, Body Heat. Those are great.
Yeah.
I might suggest.
Thanks, lad.
I might suggest that the most recent iteration of Perry Mason might have been an attempt to kind of capture noir. I don't know, HBO with Matthew Rhys from The Americans. I thought it was great. It was very very dark, and it wasn't all shot at night or anything like that. I mean, there were some sunny scenes, but a lot of that sort of imagery that I remember from the noir that I've seen. Yeah, so
then my question would be, what's the difference between noir then and a detective movie?
Delivery, mood.
Well, I think, like, this is why I don't think noir is a mood, let's say. A mood, a vibe, but is it really a genre? Detective movie's a genre. You can have a detective noir, but you can also have I'm thinking Beverly Hills Cop. Detective movie, you know?
Not noir.
Not noir. No. But you can also have like, noir and crime seem to, like, seem to have a lot of overlap there, but I suspect you could have a noir, like, it's almost like a flavor on crime movies. You know, even as I was about to say, but maybe it does seem to sit firmly within crime movies. Kind of like, I watched, heads up folks, this is coming out. I finally watched The Hidden Fortress, a so-called classic, and it's got a lot of Western tropes, a lot of Western elements within it. But I'm like, yeah, no, Western movies are set within X time. I'm very, like, I think of Westerns, even anything else is just using Western elements. And so I think noir is a vibe that you add to a crime movie. I kind of going way out.
So you can't have a noir Western?
I would imagine there'd be some sort of crime in that Western.
So you're saying there has to be crime in a noir? Well,
I'm kind of feeling my way here, but I think it really, or if anything, maybe you can take, and I'll use The Hidden Fortress because there's actual horse racing, and like some of it's like, that's right out of a Western. It still ain't a Western. So I think you could maybe use noir tropes in a different kind of movie, and like but I'm like, it's still gonna be just taking like vibe or maybe some atmospheric elements, but it doesn't make it a. Yeah, well, this is the thing. Is noir a genre? I don't think it is.
No,
I think it is it's a once in a blue moon. Yes, you do use sugar in a savory dish. Let's go back to my fave cooking. You can use sugar to make, and you don't notice sweet. You just notice, wow, this is really making it work. But for the most part, sugar's meant for cake, let's say, or do you know what I mean? Like, it really is a sweetening thing. Noir is a great ingredient for crime movies.
I agree with that, but I think it can also be used with other genres. So, for instance,
okay, yep,
I think that noir is what I call a pathway. And there's about 20 different pathways. And what a pathway is I think that most films, a traditional approach to telling a story in film has 5 elements. There's one protagonist that goes through change. And that goes for every genre except for romance, where there's typically 2. The audience and the protagonist basically learn information at the same time. Right? You're kind of going through the story with this protagonist. The protagonist typically follows the hero's journey. They start at home, they go off, they learn things, they come back to home with knowledge. The central payoff, the central payoff for the audience is that the protagonist battles an antagonist. There's someone out there stopping them from what they want. They go out, they do battle, they learn from doing that battle, and then they come back. And in the end, they typically come back victorious. I would say 65% of all movies kind of follow that pathway. But there's a bunch of other ways to go through that. And what noir does is it takes you on a story. Typically, the protagonist knows more than the audience. Noir is almost always told in retrospect. This is the tale. You'll never believe what happened to me, blah, blah, blah. The
end of the big sleep is also the beginning of the big sleep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But the protagonist almost always gets his ass handed to him on a plate, right? The protagonist hardly ever wins. And usually there's an antagonist, but the battle isn't with the antagonist. It's typically fate or himself or the powers that be that destroy this protagonist. And so noir takes this idea, these 5 steps of the pathway, and puts its own slant on it, and then makes it very stylish with shadows. But you could do just the same thing with a road movie. Like a road movie takes those pathway elements and turns some of them on their head in a completely different way. And so I agree with your analogy that it's like adding sugar to something that you can taste. But I call it a pathway. And I
think that's great. Yeah. No analogy is perfect.
I have to push back on one. Rob, I have to push back on one thing. Is No Country for Old Men a Western?
It has. Well, but here's. I would say it's a crime movie. It's a crime movie with Western elements, and at least it's in the southwestern United States. Like I'm. You could look at it and go, have they just changed the time frame? And maybe it's like, if you change the time frame, if you just put everyone in a lot of characters in cowboy hats anyway, but, if you could, and it'd be like, boy, it looks even more at home then.
So Westerns have to take place in the past?
I think to truly be a Western, and I'm not... This is something Jim and I have talked about because we looked at a couple of Australian movies. Well, can that be a Western? Can you have an Australian Western? Can you have a Canadian? And then we've talked about, can you have a Canadian Western? I think that was something. Jim, like what were we looking at? The Kelly Gang, yes, True History of the Kelly Gang, when we started talking about that. And it's like, something so unique to I think the Western is so unique to the American experience. It's so part of lost cause mythology, the manifest destiny. Like there's so much of that bound into it, whether it's singing its praises or in later films critiquing it and subverting it. I'd have to, you know what? I would have to look at the film again to give you a better answer than that. When I say strict, again, if it's set in the States, if it's set in the right place in that, I'm a lot more open to the idea. I'm just more. When I'm saying strict, it's when I think of there's no Canadian Western. We did not have the same experience, or the way the Western Canada was colonized. And I'm not saying Canada only did it had its own manifest destiny, but it's uniquely Canadian in the way it did it. It's not a better or worse thing. Equally awful, but different styles. Different pathways to exploit Western and run over Indigenous rights and. But yeah, so to make it, it's kind of like I would argue there's a reason there's no Canadian superhero movie. It doesn't fit with the Canadian experience. I think that's also something that is uniquely American.
So are there genres that are uniquely Canadian that come out of your unique experience?
They talk about that for literature a lot, like a lot of the sort of isolated individual on the landscape having some sort of existential crisis. There's not really a quick, snazzy way to say that, but it's those kinds of elements, often dealing with sort of a new landscape, a new country, and everything that entails. So I see that conversation more happening in terms of literature rather than movies, but. Yeah, that's interesting. We did watch Blood Quantum, which was essentially a First Nations zombie movie, or a zombie movie that took place on a First Nations in the East in New Brunswick, and that's maybe it's a mini genre. I don't know, but
yeah, right. No, that's. I mean, it's.
Well, I think of
that's really interesting.
If you look at. Okay, now I'm going to have to be a little more gentle to my own national cinema now, which is hard because I really love running it down. I've made cheap jokes about the, Canadian film. A lot of Canadian film is middle and upper middle class angst, usually hung up over sex in some way or another. Unless you're talking, and I should actually say English Canada. I mean, there's a million Canadas, but English Canada, Quebec cinema is like Quebecois cinema is like something they much like Europeans, they love genre. It's so you get just very Quebecois flavored cop shows. Very successful because it's part of the political culture of Quebec, whereas Canada, it's, but maybe I should relook at some of these films and kind of go, okay, is there a genre here? Because actually, I got to admit, I'm not saying that there's been no exploration of sex and hang-ups in any other national cinema, but there is a certain Canadian film that is very... I have not seen yet in another national cinema where it's like, Sean Garrity, a Winnipeg filmmaker, actually got my break into the local industry many years ago through one of his first feature film. And it's about a middle class technocrat hung up about sex, and all his friends and family hung up about sex. It's like it's a thing.
Right.
So maybe there is, but yeah, as far as the Western goes, even a Canadian Western would always feel ersatz to me. The Western is so cooked in, like it's such an important, like that genre is so linked to the United States or America's experience of itself. Even as it changes the Western until it kind of broke. And maybe now actually, you know what? Maybe it's what you were talking about earlier, Eric, how you're saying noir at one time you could really say, yeah, this is a firm genre. Now it's changed. Was the Western a firm genre? Still is a firm genre in some films, but in other films, it's more of a pathway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so all of a sudden that allows it to jump out of the constraints I've put on the genre, the box I've put it in, and be something different or inform. Now I'm going to have to look at my notes for The Hidden Fortress again. Thanks for nothing, Eric. I've been my own noir. Doesn't work out. I started this adventure thinking this, and now I'm here.
Well, one of the things that's so great about it is, I don't consider myself to have come up with any of this. I think that genre evolves as people are drawn to films and more films like that film are made. Yeah. I just like to identify patterns and organize them so I can have conversations with other creative people, with my students, and so that we're all talking about the same thing. And I think you're right. I mean, genres will over time come and go, and things will become stronger or less strong in the, I don't know, the influence they have on society. I think one of Vlad mentioned, you brought it up. I mean, he's talking about Cormac McCarthy, who writes a lot of stories about in the West that I would consider Western literature. I think No Country for Old Men is a Western, but we could talk about that later at some other time. But I think the question then that Katie had was, is Back to Future 3 a Western? But that doesn't take place in the past, or does it? I mean, it does, but it doesn't. But yeah, I think it is the Western as well.
Okay. Well, there you go, Katie. We have a subject matter expert brought to you. Christ, we're just knocking them down here, folks. This is why we have the best chat on the internet, which attracts some of the best guests on the internet.
Don't bring up Star Wars. Anyway,
that will come later. I'm working my way through all these films that even Lucas said influenced Star Wars. Hence the Hidden Fortress. I'm going to go through them all. I'm going to build all these little mini reviews, and then Jim, we will come to a does Star Wars hold up?
So if we have still have a little bit of time left, I don't want to take up all your evening. A few words about your own career there, Eric. How did you get on the pathway you're on now into film?
Wow. That's a great question. I've always wanted to be a filmmaker. I mean, I love telling stories. And so I went to school for filmmaking, and I sold my first screenplay to Peter Falk. I sold a Columbo made-for-TV movie to Peter Falk.
Awesome.
And then I wrote. I did a lot of rewriting. I did adaptations, mostly uncredited. Most of them never got made. Made a couple films, and then I fell into teaching, and I've been teaching for about 15 years. And one of the fun things I've been doing recently is figuring out new ways to tell stories. So I'm looking at virtual reality and what they call 360-degree VR cinema, where the camera is shooting every direction. New media storytelling. I don't know. I just love to tell stories. I like to teach, and I like to make movies. So all kind of feathers together.
Did you get a chance to interact directly with Mr. Falk, or was it?
Oh, I did. Yeah. Well, I pitched my show ideas to them, and so that's where I really got to hang out with him. I met with him over the course of 2 days, and pitched ideas. And pitches are supposed to usually be very short, and so you go in and typically you pitch for maybe 10 minutes, maybe half an hour. Mm-hmm. I had 3 ideas, and we discussed them for 6 hours, 3 hours. And then because he kept asking questions like, Columbo, wait a minute. You say it was a dark and rainy night. It was a dark and rainy night in California? I'm like, it was an unusual dark and rainy night. Oh, okay. Continue.
We'll have some voice or some radio, some exegetic or diegetic radios talking about the rare summer rainstorms we've been getting.
Exactly.
It'll all play out.
So I worked with him while I wrote the script, and we did rewrites and that sort of stuff. But that was mostly actually back in the day. This was even distance, right? So we'd get on the phone. Yeah. I was living in Ohio, and we would talk about the rewrites. And then, unfortunately, he retired before. It was Columbo and Sorcery and the Sorcery Circus, and he retired. He retired before they made it.
Did he ever pull the
now?
One
Vlad
final
here is
yeah, exactly. One more thing.
One last thing, Mr. Williams. I'm not doing the justice. Sorry, Rob. What were you saying?
I was going to say, support Walt here is now. He's hooped. He's never going to know. Unless they revive it. So.
I imagine you've seen Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you finish.
I imagine you've seen Wings of Desire, then, Eric. Or
Oh yeah, yeah,
Oh, what a that's
yeah. That's a great movie.
The whole plot around him. I don't want to give it away, but there's sort of a little supernatural plot around him. I remember seeing that in our little art house cinema that's since closed in town here, Cinema 3 on Ellis, and it was just what a great and a great part for him too.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a phenomenal actor. He was doing that bridge between television and film decades before anybody was. I mean, he just loved to act.
Yeah.
He's a neat guy.
Those Columbos are fun to watch too. I mean, still
today.
Yeah, my wife and I watched one a little while last year, maybe during COVID, and it was really good. And then, go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
Hey. No, I can't see your picture is still on my thing, so I can't tell if you're about to speak or not.
Oh, it's all good. Continue.
And so now you operate. Are you active on social media at all? I know some of
not too much.
Yeah, is that paid off? Do you think, or I know it's sometimes a burden, sometimes a curse.
Yeah,
You do have a website, Williams on Story, right?
I have a website, yes, Williams on Story, but I don't actively post things. I don't know. I've been focusing more on being a professor and having people come to me rather than pushing stuff out. Mm-hmm. I guess the one thing that I do on a fairly regular basis is I'm putting out Audible series. And so I did one on the history of the golden age of television and how to enjoy romance movies. And I'm pitching one actually about the crime genre. So I'm waiting to see if they want to hire me next year to do, or in the fall, to do a series on how to enjoy crime movies. And
so is that like an Audible, like their podcast series, their Audible exclusives kind of?
They're Audible originals. All of mine are free if you're an Audible member. So they're typically like 10 episode, 10, 30-minute episodes.
Well, okay, folks, I will find a kind of master link, pin it in a comment. Below in the description is Eric's website there, and I'll also pin that in a comment later. What are you working on right now? What are you looking forward to right now?
Oh, that's a great question.
What are you excited about?
Here's what I'm excited about. I think that we're at a place now where stories are the way that people enjoy stories are changing. And so I love watching stories on the screen. I love going to theater, but I'm also getting into like these mysteries that are on the web where you have to go to a website and then you find something and then you go to a museum in real time and you find the second clue. And I think what I'm going on sabbatical next year, so I'm not teaching next year, and I'm just going to spend a year thinking about new ways to tell stories, and just to see what new medium is going to, where stories are going to go in the future, I guess.
I recommend playing the game Detroit Become Human.
Detroit Become Human?
Yes. It was a PlayStation game. It got ported over to PC. One of the most visceral story experiences I've had in a number of years. It's designed, you play 3 characters, and yeah, there's some gameplay components, but you get the idea right from the beginning of how you get to choose how you want to play the character, not just in a, do I go left or right? Do I choose this door or that door? Not like a choose, but more, how am I going to play this cop? Is he going to be a dick all the time? Is he going to, how am I going to play her? Is she going to sell out the little kid? Is she, you get a choice of how you want to.
Oh, you're playing 3 characters simultaneously?
In chapters, and they're all in the same world, but you'll play one character for a while and they have a storyline. And then you'll play another character for a while and that character will have a storyline. They're all in the same world, but they don't intertwine and, oh, there he is as I walk by. Not like that. I've played it. I got several hours in. There's one character. She has this little kid. It's kind of robots. It's in a robot world. There's an underground railroad. It's very obviously and weakly, alluding to the African American experience. Like I'm not in any way defending their somewhat simplistic liberal interpretation. That said, as a game experience, like I was angry that I wasn't able to get the woman and the little girl to literally the Canadian border. Like maybe not just before, but you could see the light at the end of the tunnel and they got caught. I was mad. I was choked up. I haven't been able to play the game since. It was such a visceral experience. I have to go back, but this is over a year ago, I think now. And Jim, I bring this up regularly on the show. Mm-hmm. What an experience that I get to be in the movie.
Yeah.
I get to make real character choices. Like, how do you want to play this? Because it gives you enough options and it's not necessarily as much about, it does have an impact on future events. It can affect, the makers definitely want you to, be a better person, but you don't have to. It isn't the only way to success. Well, but without I get to do horrible things with impunity, a la an open sandbox world. There is consequences.
Yeah.
But that you get, it is the IKEA model of I only need to assemble 30% of this movie, but goddamn, I feel satisfied.
Yeah.
Like it's that IKEA model of I built something.
Mm-hmm.
No. Many people did most of the hard work, but I still evolved just enough.
That's right. I put those little pieces together.
Yeah, but I got the Allen wrench. It's assembled. Like I said, by that point when we didn't make it, I was mad at the controller because this sucks. This gameplay bullshit.
But that's amazing that you get that. Yeah, but it's amazing that you can get that mad over playing a game.
Yeah,
that's strong. I mean, that's what I'm really interested in is, what's it going to be like 10 years from now? What is entertainment going to be? How do stories mesh into that? I would imagine, in Detroit Become Human, I mean, they're still playing with a lot of genre tropes, right? There's something about the human experience and storytelling that digital technology is going to be tapping into in ways that we haven't figured out yet. And I want to check that out.
It's how I knew that I could play this a certain way. Like there's enough there that you're like, I get this. I could be this character. Like I have a character, but I get to, like an actor, make certain choices about it. Yeah. I may still be in the director's movie, but I get to put some of me by choosing into it. Like, you're halfway familiar with movies. You can enjoy this game. The more you're into film, I think the more you kind of go, I get what they're doing here. Mm-hmm. But hours later, you're like, did you get the little girl across the... like really? Right. I'm serious. Right. You just... This sucks.
I'm not playing this stupid game again.
But I'll keep talking about it. Keep recommending it.
Yeah.
Way to show them.
Screw you, Sony.
That's really funny. The other thing I'm really getting into... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No.
See, the other thing I'm really getting into is 360-degree storytelling. So it's
what is that?
So it's not interactive, but it's... excuse my reach.
As you spin 300... Well, at least 180 degrees.
So we have these cameras, that shoot in every direction. So each of those is a lens.
Here, let me give you the whole screen so you can...
So each of those is a lens.
Yep.
And each one shoots at about 100, a little bit more than 120 degrees. And so you put that on a tripod and, you shoot, but it shoots the entire room. So if I put this here on my chair, right, and then we shoot it and we stitch it together and we make a sphere, you observe them through a headset, right? So you put and whichever way you look, you are where your head is, wherever that camera was. And so it puts you quite literally into the scene, and you can shoot it a couple ways. I mean, you could do something where you're a fly on the wall and nobody interacts with you, and you look down and you don't see a body. You're just kind of there invisibly. Or you can, we can give the person a body, right? And you look down and I'm a cop. I'm driving a cop car. Oh, I get it. And then that puts you become that character, and then people talk to you. Anyway, we're trying to figure out how to tell stories that way. So that's what I did a lot.
Exciting.
Thanks. Yeah. It's a blast. We do some stuff and it's absolutely terrible, and then we do some stuff which is pretty cool.
Wow.
All of creative exercise ever, eh?
Yeah.
Boy, this is a piece of crap that'll never see the light of day.
Right. But we learned how to not do that. Won't do that again.
I did one more thing back to genre, because we're looking at and I might have, because you're here, already in my head I'm like, oh, I think I know the answer to this question. And how can you tell I have not given the pathway chapter as much time as other chapters, but we're looking at Indiana Jones next. I struggle with this because the only thing I would add to your list would be the adventure, because I do think that there's something very specific about an adventure movie, and it can be a fantasy adventure, but there's the magical element, it's not just a journey like it really is. It takes time. Even Indiana Jones, there's sleepovers there as well. They had time to hang out in Cairo for a while, and then they had to go somewhere else. And, you have these components. Like, when I think of an adventure movie, I do think of certain characters, certain stories, and a certain atmosphere, that I wouldn't necessarily put in a pure action movie, which, Die Hard is such a stellar example of.
Well, I agree.
So
with
I'm wondering about that.
That was the one. I did a lot of noodling around when I was writing this book and trying to figure out how to organize my thoughts. And quite honestly, that was the last one I took off the genre list, and it killed me because it would be so nice to be like, there's 12 genres, but I didn't. I felt like adventure went better as a macro, because it's a good addendum. Like, you can have a war adventure, right? You can have an action adventure. You can have a thriller adventure. Like, I think all the
Saving Private Ryan becomes a war adventure. Yeah.
Yep. You can have sci-fi adventures. Thriller adventures. I don't know. That's why I could be convinced to put it back on. That it does have a lot of its own unique elements.
All right, at least that's a great answer. It means I'm not crazy. When you come up, you say, "What about this?" And the person, "No, and this is why." And you apparently didn't read the book. But thanks for buying.
Yeah.
I do appreciate the purchase.
But again, a lot of what I tell my students is that this is something that we all kind of come up with. I don't know. It's not like I've decided that this is the way it is. It's just like, here's how I like to organize. Here's how I think an organization works. And what I'd love to do is have people talking all about it, and maybe we decide over the years that things are in the wrong places, and adventure is a genre, and noir isn't a pathway, because somebody brought up. I mean, you guys just put a whole bunch of knowledge in my head about just the United States centric element of a Western. I mean so there's got to just be a ton of other genres because other societies have their perspective on stories.
Yeah. Well, Australia might have the occasional walkabout movie, that kind of thing.
That's right.
Yeah. So, in terms of Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, I was thinking about this, and I thought either it's a real smart question or it's a real dumb question. I didn't come to a conclusion. Could you call it a war movie?
No.
Okay.
I don't think, and it's funny because I've go ahead.
Oh, I got it. No, you want to hear your answer, but I think it's a spy movie. It's an espionage movie. It's because their powers in conflict, but they're not at war. It's he's going in undercover, hired. He's a spy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, to me, somebody I did this series on how to enjoy great movies for great courses. Yeah, for Wondrium. And somebody pushed back really hard and said that The Imitation Game was a war movie.
Oh, the one about is that Benedict Cumberbatch?
Yeah, and Keira Knightley.
Bletchley Park.
Yeah. As Alan Turing, is that his name? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And the idea would be, my response basically in a few sentences is, just because the story takes place during war does not make it a war movie.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to what you're talking about, the Christmas movie. Just putting a tree in it doesn't make it a Christmas movie.
That's right.
But if you're using Christmas... Sorry, continue.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. But if Die Hard actually using Christmas to kind of paint the scene... not paint the scene, to kind of give us an idea of the atmosphere, the
flavor it.
More than flavor, like this is a time when families, a lot of Christmas movies, there's a problem in the family and it comes together at the end to unify in the spirit of Christmas, where even a cop can finally kill a man again.
Yes. I
mean, but yeah, sorry that I get excited. I'm a little excited.
So so to me, a lot of it has to do with what are you doing with the pieces of the story and how do they play into your film as a whole. And so, the idea of The Imitation Game, it certainly is all about trying to figure out how to stop the Nazis, and it takes place in World War II. But the story is really about how that character is punished for being a homosexual.
Yeah.
And the entire movie is actually taking place in flashbacks. And the flashbacks are being told because he is being interrogated. Mm-hmm. And it's really an investigation. And you don't realize that through the entire movie, spoiler alert, until the end, when they say, great, it's wonderful that you helped put an early end to World War II, but you're a homosexual and therefore you are guilty of this crime. And so in retrospect, it's a crime movie. And the tale that is told that condemns him is a story that takes place during World War II, which is a different intention than if you're telling the story about soldiers who are going to war. And it's the same with Casablanca. Like, I don't think Casablanca is a war movie either, even though it takes place in the war. I mean, that is a romance that takes place during the war.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Can you say war adjacent, I guess?
Walt brings up another great movie in agreeing with you, Eric. Eric, totally agree. Mrs. Miniver is not The Longest Day. Like it really, there's Mrs. Miniver. She's the is she American or is her husband American? Middle class.
I'm not making the reference. I don't know who Mrs. Miniver is.
It was I think maybe even shot in the 40s. It might have even been a war film. But it was about this family pulling together as they went through the Blitz, and but it was a slice of life.
Yes, that takes place during the war.
Yeah, one of the things that's pressure on the family is a war, but they're not. Yeah,
right. So
1942. William Wyler directed it.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Yeah. Definitely a war propaganda film. Like it was written to. This is why we need to be with the British, because look at what if Mrs. Miniver can pull her family together.
Mm-hmm. Right, but that again, if you're looking at the intention of the film, it's to say that everyday people, slice of life, can go through small events that are affected by something larger, this war. So that's why I have a macro that's military, right? And so I think The Imitation Game is a crime movie that has a macro element that is military, because military definitely plays a big part of that story, but it doesn't give you the tropes of a war film.
Yeah, and it's a sweetheart little film, actually. Like it really is. It's the British, and Walt actually has an ongoing series of these British films. I know Mrs. Miniver is an American film, but the British experience of World War II, which are not your standard war movies. They're you can even say some of the ones where The Cruel Sea, not your typical, we will now go into combat, we will overcome, perhaps some of us won't come back, blah, blah, blah. Although there's a lot of those elements. Anyway, we are getting into our second hour, Jim. And we haven't talked about the movie. So
what movie?
I'm just gonna do this here. Okay, listen, Eric, before you go, before we say, well, there's the door, bye-bye, what would you mind giving us your, first of all, your quick review of Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Harrison Ford as an archaeologist loses a golden idol, returns to get it back, fights Nazis, and goes on an adventure.
Sure.
Okay, that's my quick review.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's my favorite drama movie of all times.
I'm going to cut that out specifically, and then when Jim and I's, our colleagues on the YouTube Film Beat, at our tier level, when we bring it up, I'll say, absolutely, let's bring this up. See, this is why
right.
Drama isn't genre.
Yeah, proof positive.
Yeah.
And then the memes, the Eric Williams memes will begin.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Would you know what? It's 40 years old this year.
Wow.
Like it came out in summer of 1981.
Mm-hmm.
Worth people's time now.
I think so. Yeah, I do think so. Yeah.
All right.
I can't say why, because I don't think I've seen it since the 80s.
Oh, that's even better. This is perfect.
Cool. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah,
Eric, thank you. And would love to. I'm saying we. I know I would love to have you back if you're open to that sometime in the future. Maybe we'll pick a movie,
anytime.
walk through the whole process.
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah, I would love to do it. Just let me know.
You bet. You've been here halfway through anyway, so you kind of get the idea of how deep we go.
Yeah.
You won't go, wow, are you really talking about this one movie a long time? You'll be like, well,
Yep.
what are you, new? You're not new anymore. All right, Eric.
Thanks,
you
guys.
so very
Yeah,
much.
thanks. Nice meeting you.
Jim, Rob, and nice to meet all of you typing in on the chat. That was
You
great.
bet. All right,
See ya.
man. Ciao.
Bye.
Sure.
Bye. Wow.
One
What
last
do you-
question.
What a great guest, eh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No,
Like,
super
just-
interesting.
I mean, that was outstanding.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think he's about an hour later than us too, so I hope we didn't keep him from his bedtime. But I think Ohio was an hour
You
ahead.
seem to be into it.
Oh yeah.
I think we're all right. Yes. Okay. Yes, we are. Let's actually let me clear this nonsense off. I'm gonna take the screen quickly, Jim, while I get the standard show on the road.
Yep.
All right. Let's start this. Let's get this machine going. All right, everyone. Welcome, of course, to Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies. After an amazing interview with an amazing prof, amazing storyteller and film analyzer, you know what? We're now actually getting into it. What are we getting into today? We are asking the question. You know, we're looking at Raiders of the Lost Ark, the original 1981 film. The log line from IMDb is, in 1936, archaeologist and adventurer Indiana Jones is hired by the United States government to find the Ark of the Covenant before Adolf Hitler's Nazis can obtain its awesome powers. It was directed by Steven Spielberg, written by Lawrence Kasdan, from a story by George Lucas and Philip Kaufman. Of course, he was the producer. Stars Harrison Ford, Karen Allen, and Paul Freeman. It also stars Ronald Lacey, John Rhys Davies, and the late, great Denham Elliott. What we're asking today, of course, we go through our standard agenda, but at the end, we are going to ask the question, does this 40-year-old movie hold up? So, without much further ado, get Jim back on the screen here, and let's get started. Jim, what's your quick review of this remarkable film?
Well, quick review. I'd say, wow, this brings me back to childhood. I'm not very objective about this one. I saw it at the North Star Theater on Portage Avenue in downtown Winnipeg. And quick little tangent, I went with Darren Call, who you know, and a guy named Scott. And I was so excited about going to see this that their practical joke was that they were going to go see History of the World Part 1 by Mel Brooks. And so I said, fine, I'm just going to go watch Raiders on my own. It turned out they were in the same theater. Ha ha. And anyway. Yeah, exactly. But it was
Gold, boys.
It was great to watch. It still retains that sort of dusty, that it feels hot. It feels like a summer movie. Probably, I'd say the most summary. I'd say this is the summariest movie that I can kind of think of, maybe next to Jaws.
That's a great take, Jim. For myself, I remember, and this may have actually been my introduction to Siskel and Ebert, real introduction to it. I remember my dad saying, oh, this movie I heard about, it's coming out. I think I'm going to go see it. This Raiders of the Lost Ark. And because my dad is of a similar vintage as Lucas and Spielberg, he was waxing nostalgic about the style of film it was supposed to be, very much alluding to a B film or serialized shorts a la the 40s and 50s and radio play dramas or adventures. And it is, and of course, and this would be one of my takes on this film was it had the best. It really was. We saw a movement from the mid-70s on, and this may have been the end of a great, very brief era of taking classic B movie subjects, whether it be Star Wars and space opera, this with the adventure film, and now I'm doing it anyway, calling it a genre, but taking this kind of thing, but bringing the best storytelling talent to the fore, the best effects, for the time, a huge budget. This is what happens when you give A-level treatment to a B movie. You make a great film. And that is Raiders of the Lost Ark to me. Even the tacking on Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark as part of a branding exercise seemed I hated typing it in. It was Raiders of the Lost Ark to me, still is in my brain.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, and just when you get a bit older, or now that I'm older, I sort of appreciate things a little more than I maybe took for granted the first time I saw it. Like, how great is Karen Allen in this, and how great is Paul Freeman as Belloc, the antagonist, Indy's rival. I really appreciate them now, and Belloc is not as good as Roy Batty, and not nearly as scary, but he's got sort of, he's got some complexity there. And Marion's just, I maybe didn't like her as much as a kid.
Shall we dive in deeper? Later?
Yeah. We can save it for later. But
I think you kind of captured your quick review.
Yes,
or is it going to be a 20-minute review?
No,
and we'll just say, all right, everybody, come back next week for part 2.
And another thing.
Yeah. Is it worth your time, Jim? Is it worth the audience's time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely. All right. That brings us, I mean, this may be a shocker to everyone, but that does bring us to... We're in the spoiler zone now, everyone. All right. Jim, why don't you're kind of on a run there. Maybe rewind a little, go whoop, 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 and start talking about the craft of the film.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that you notice, like immediately, there's little tricks and they're having fun with it. Like they have the Paramount movie logo to start the movie, like the MGM lion, and that mountain morphs into the Peruvian mountain that's actually in Hawaii, but it morphs into the mountain that Indy's looking at. Their target for that.
One of the best match cuts ever.
Yeah, and from there on, there's shadows. I can't count. And for me, maybe if I was a little bit tetchy, I'd say something about how many times they use the fedora in shadow to symbolize Indy. But I ate it up. I thought it was great. A lot of great use of shadow and light and fire and all that all the lighting tricks that they have. Just fun and an homage, like the different wipes on Star Wars and that sort of thing, So, the
map gag.
Yeah.
Which was done a lot in a previous time.
Oh yeah.
The flying boat.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And of course he doesn't notice this guy with all the refueling stops. He doesn't recognize the evil Nazi in the black leather coat or whatever it is. But it looked like they were visually that whoever was the production design, the cinematographer, the special effects, they were all at the top of their game with this and having fun. That's how it comes across anyway. And when I was a kid and I saw it, and keeping in mind I was sitting in the theater by myself because my friends hilariously abandoned me, I guess I was pretty excited about the movie because I heard laughing after the credits rolled. Everyone's getting up. I heard laughing, and there's two older couples that were sort of giggling at me. I guess I was bouncing in my seat a lot or something to that effect. But fun then, fun now. So
yeah. It is. Even the, you mentioned performance earlier, Jim. Everyone knew what they were doing in the film. They knew that. Yeah, all the Nazis were stereotypes, caricatures. But I got, even watching it again, it's like, boy, they're having fun with this. They're not leaving anything, they're not taking, they're leaving it all on the table. They're having fun with it. They're getting into it. They all know the movie they're in. Now, mind you, that's a testament to the direction they're getting as well, the quality of the material in front of them, but they're delivering. Everyone in every scene, not one, well, he's doing what he does. Mm-hmm. And you're right, Jim, like the sets are amazing. I go back to what I was saying before. It's like, wow, this is what you do when you're bringing a talent to every aspect of the film. The sets, then the miniatures, the props. I still think, when I think of the big treasure, I think of the Ark of the Covenant, which Richard had a question for you. Did you feel the need to calculate the weight of the gold on the Ark and whether two men would have any hope of lifting it?
It's a great question. No. I wasn't like, wait a sec. The gold case, it reminds me of the gold case failed game show on 30 Rock. But I didn't even like. There was some suspension of disbelief required here. But as far as I know, the Germans,
you're not thinking about it because it owns you. You're like, it's magical. There is magic stuff happening here.
Oh, yeah.
At no time are you going, let me get out my calculator, because you're in the movie. Even remember when the lid slams down at the very end.
Yeah.
Goes up into heaven, slams down, and the thud, because this was a game changer in sound design.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't hear gunfire like we heard gunfire in this movie, where it had that extra punch.
Yeah.
But it, like right at the end, and it kind of thuds on it, and it feels like so much heft without, like, it just stellar.
Yeah.
This could have and should have won all of the Oscars.
Yeah. I mean, there's, like I said, there's some things that afterwards I looked up, were the Nazis really in Egypt? That kind of thing. But
yeah.
But at the time, you're so taken. Like, it's just, it is, and the metaphor I always use, that rolling ball in the Peruvian jungle that comes after Indy. They do take some breaks. There are some nice sort of slower, in the good sense. There's some slower scenes, but overall the movie is like that rolling ball. Like, it's just it's sort of a momentum thing, and it carries you right through to the end, and it really doesn't take maybe the last hour doesn't seem to take a break.
Yeah, well, and it's very. The true definition, like a great roller coaster, starts slow, then you got a nice build, and woof, and then really does that well. And that's just a testament to the craft of the piece, that nothing ever, no performance, no special effect, no big sequence, no big action set piece ever takes you out of the film. Mm-hmm. And again, I want to talk about those unsung heroes, something we have always talked about on our show, Jim. That idea of, that there's more selling you on a film than, and part of that is the sound, not just the soundtrack, which is amazing.
Yeah.
It's the sound design, the way they set you in the space, the way things punch, even the punching, the big punch out with the flying wing.
Yeah.
You know, which has got to be one of the more Walt in the chat mentioned about the pretty graphic violence. Like,
Yeah.
you know, they don't show you, but you know what happened. The guy, it's like, ugh.
The blood on the spray of blood.
Even watching it now, how close and how they build that tension again with music and sound, and yet at the same time, actors having a great time having a fight. And
and a lot of their kind of that big guy that gives Indy about 10 good headshots, by the way, credited as a Sherpa. So I think he's probably the palest Sherpa in all the land. But there's another thing too. I guess this is craft. It might have to do with location too, but not really since the Road Warrior that we looked at last summer have I noticed such a luxury of space that they get to use. And it's that desert set, and it's the dig. And so there's various peaks. It's like a little Valley of the Kings, I guess they call it. But I guess it's supposed to be like that.
No, it was a city. Tanis.
Yeah, Tanis, I'm sorry, yeah. But it's sort of, there's various temples and things that they've, dug up or what have you. And just that, they're in one, the Indy and his crew is in the foreground, and then you see a sort of a depression, and then there's action that rises up behind them in the distance. And I just thought, man, that's just such a luxury to have that amount of space. And I think they use some computers and stuff afterwards. There's a real Poltergeist vibe, with the sky turning as they're digging at night. And
that would have been practicals and plates.
Yeah.
They were not. They were. But practical and plates, like they would have been doing blue screen. Mm-hmm. There would have been optical effects, not visual effects.
But there's a lower key. There's some lower key shots, and I just thought, how great to have that. And I think they shot those ones in Tunisia, which of course Lucas was familiar with the Star Wars franchise. But just such a nice sense of space throughout most of it. So.
One of our research irregulars says, I believe the huge German guy who fights with Indy was in all of the first three movies in similar roles. For example, he played a giant slave master in Temple of Doom.
Yeah. And
Thank you very much, Richard L.
Walt mentions the digging at sunset scene, and that's one that I so much of this movie was memorable, like Marion, in the shootout in the bar, and the whiskey's pouring out, and she grabs a drink before she goes to knock out somebody.
So let's move into story then.
Sure.
But before that, folks, I'm actually going to take a moment. We missed some of our standard stuff. I'm going to record it now because I won't do it later. So I will quickly take over the screen. Mute that for a second. And yes, let's quickly talk about the ideological ingredients of the film. Would it have earned a reframe stamp? No, it would not have. Notwithstanding, that it did have a great woman lead character, would not have got it. Was it a unionized shop? Yes, it was. Would it have passed the Bechdel test? Or did it pass the Bechdel test? Did it pass the Bechdel test? It did. It did not. And last but certainly not least, is there any examples of class consciousness for this film? Nope. All right. now that I've done that, let's get back to let's get Jim back on the screen here. And yes, let's move into story, because we're already talking about scenes and everything. So unless, is there anything in particular you wanted to add about craft, Jim? Oh, there we go. Sorry about that, man.
Sorry, I was just going to message you. That's fine. I was just going to say, it was funny that Denholm Elliott, I remember him from this, and he appears in some of the other movies too. But he's actually just had a little bit at the start, maybe the end. But him and John Rhys Davies both have some nice little quiet moments of like there's, I don't want to say breathe because we always use that, but there's a couple moments where they have just low-key, genuine kind of nice little turns, whether it's a line or two, and I thought that was quite interesting to see. John Rhys Davies, of course, is a big sort of booming presence, but this one he seems a little lower key than we see him now, and maybe it's that sort of that John Lovitz actorly thing, that's sort of tamped down a bit.
Well, it's impressive. They're both in scenes where where both characters are trying to impress upon Indy this is different, because Indy in all those in those scenes. And I'm going to flip right over to story because that's really what we're talking about here. All those scenes and beautiful little scenes are really about this is different. And so they, like when you're, we got to be serious here. The resonance picks up even though the volume goes down, and, it's different now. Don't think of it. And he's always, I know how to take care of myself, because up to, it's one of, I think it's actually one of his Indiana Jones character issues is that I don't believe in that mumbo jumbo. This is all just another adventure. And every time they're like, no, this guy's different, and this is different, and you're dealing with different forces, or this has a different vibe. And that's the best part. Like, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we talk about a scene breathing, it doesn't mean that it's just kind of doing nothing.
Yeah.
The scene has a purpose, and it's quiet, and it takes its time because it really wants, the filmmakers want to make sure you get something.
Yeah.
And every film needs moments, and these are expository moments, but they give it such import, such weight, that you don't feel like you're being, I got to get some information here before we can move into, before I can move to the next level. This is another cutscene, or, look, I found a diagram. Now do I got to read this? Can I just put it in my inventory? Yeah. That isn't that. Does that make sense to you?
And add some texture to the characters that may not have been there before, allows them a little, not everything's sort of big and in your face. It's sort of something that I've come to appreciate a lot, in my dotage. But yeah.
Katie's chiming in early saying the soundtrack holds up. I think we're both we're agreeing with you. Also Richard L says, regarding the Bechdel test, thought there was some brief dialogue between Marion and Salah's wife about the monkey. Yes, but she's not a named character. Do they really have a conversation? Is it like it is a good point.
Or does it work? Does it work if two men talk about Marion? Is that, or my
no, not at all.
Yeah.
Two women characters talking about something other than a man.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what, Richard? Maybe it may be worth looking at again. I might put a little asterisk when I publish the quick review. Good point. Thanks, Richard, for bringing that up. What about the story in general? Like the overall story of the piece?
Yeah. Just before, in terms of, we can talk about if elements of the story hold up, because I think there's some certain thoughts there, especially regarding archaeology and museums and that sort of thing. But the story itself, I was engaged by it. One of the interesting things about it is that when I asked Eric if it was a war movie. You know, as I was leaning towards it, not because it all sort of takes place in that pre-war period, 1936. But I think that lends it a little bit of tension. Anyway, you know, a lot of people at that point have sort of figured out what the Germans are up to, and they did colonize quite infamously some parts of Africa, and not, you know, in pretty violent ways too. So I think Namibia and a couple. Well, the African Queen, I think that was about that. But anyway, there's some tension built in there that I think is not exactly wartime tension, but it sort of adds to it for me.
But I think though that you know, as we discussed before, it is, you know, as far as genre goes, it's a spy movie. It's an action movie, or I'm already adding it to Eric's list, adventure. Although I kind of like when people talk action adventure, you know. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. But it is an espionage movie. It would fit within that. It fits well within that because that's what he is. He's a you know what? He is a thief. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what he does. He may be thief for the within movie good guys, but they're high. Go find out. Get it for us. We'll pay for everything. All expenses. Like, they're hiring a contractor to go steal something. That's espionage. You know, and so I think that is what gives it the tension. Yes, we know the context. The Nazis, I hate, you know, and later as it's getting closer to the war, I hate Nazis, you know, but here as Vlad says, he is a raider.
Yeah.
But I think that gives attention. But as far as the story goes, there's a reason it's talked. You know, so many screenwriting books, so many filmmaking books, so many classes. So it's like, this is how you structure a great story. Here, how would you introduce a character who's both intellectual but also a swashbuckler? All right, here you go. He put him in this temple with a rolling ball and a cap, and you know, like it so effectively describes a character and introduces the villain. You know, everything. And actually, like, that whole opening sequence from him getting on the plane, it reflects and gives us how the movie in many respects is going to turn out. You know what? He gets out alive. The Ark isn't at the museum. You know, it's like in some ways his external goals are not met. But it is, I mean, his internal ones are. Like, it is a, you know, he does thwart the bad guys kind of at the end and that, but, you know, I think it's almost like a perfectly structured story. There's not one scene that you go, well, we could have clipped this, or it could have gotten shorter. Like, there is room to breathe, but there's no fat.
Yeah, and there's none of those sort of video game side adventures where you go, you know, this is obviously just thrown in there as an obstacle. That's kind of a tiring. Like, it all just, you know, he goes to Nepal to pick up Marion, get some information, that sort of thing, and it's just it's got a real nice kind of pathway. It's got a real nice. It just takes a real sweet route and gets there. Even, you know, the opening scene, as we're talking about the Paramount Mountain morphing into the Peruvian mountain, and then the first thing you see is India from behind, and then he makes his way. The first human face you see is Alfred Molina as one of the crew that eventually turns against him. Yep. And then about 10 or 15 seconds later, then there's the reveal, and this pretty much tells you hey guys, this is going to be a franchise, and this is the first time you're seeing this guy's face. And he turns around and he's all lit in a certain way.
Yeah.
And there's like a whoosh of music, and even there, like you're sort of just aware of how they're introducing everything. It's like bam, you're in. So it's quite good, quite expert.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We got in the chat a bit of back and forth between Vlad and Richard talking about some of the, hey, if you thought about it, how did that work? And Vlad's bringing up the, Indy got into the German sub pen. Going back to the gold case, I don't think they ever said it was made of solid gold. I think it was like all Egyptian stuff. It's like, well, let's put some gold leaf on something.
Yeah.
But that's almost besides the place. Indy gets into the German sub pen from the U-boat. Heck, how did he hide in the U-boat? Like, they were out in the open ocean. He swims, he gets on top, he takes off his shirt or something, and then all of a sudden later he's fine. And Richard then brings up and he gets dragged under the truck. Although I think that one was pretty, at times it's like, well, that's, thank God that truck's jacked up so high.
And somebody thoughtfully put a furrow down the middle of the road.
Yeah, there's all these things. Yeah. But I think that is a testament actually to the effectiveness of the story, of the storytelling, is that I'm going to use well, it's part of the editing. And one of the things they always tell you is when you're editing video, editing film, cut on action, and how a great cut can sell the cut that you don't even know there was a cut. And you'll see sometimes I've been able to, boy, that's such a match. You would not know unless you really knew that I cut out a bunch of nonsense in there. And then some where you see the cut, it's really obvious and kind of jarring. And wait, what? Took you out of the movie. That is how effective the storytelling is, and some of the craft. But it's like, why explain that? He got on the thing. By that point, by the time he gets on that U-boat, it's like, boy, this is one resourceful bugger. Well, at the same time, always kind of on the back foot. You never think he's Superman either.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So you can think of him as he's going to get himself out of that jam without having to explain it. And I think actually it's great that Richard L. and Vlad brought up these things. I would argue that it's actually the strength of the storytelling and the strength of the craft, the editing and everything, that you are never thinking about it until well after the film, where it's like, boy, that was convenient.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell did he do? It's not, hey, I got missed on a large cruise liner.
Yeah.
He was even had to steal another uniform. He was still in the same Indy clothes,
Yeah.
Anyway.
We didn't miss it. It's the next one where doesn't he actually meet Hitler and he's wearing or
the third.
Is it the third one? Okay.
And still unshaven, because of course.
Yes.
The Last Crusade. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yeah.
That's the one where he meets, because they had to go to Berlin to get the book from Ilsa, because every blonde Nazi woman has to have the name of Ilsa.
Yes.
But anyway, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you could probably argue, and only in the metaphorical sense, that Indy's maybe a early ancestor of Die Hard John McClane a little bit. The kind of little bit sloppy, a little bit, things kind of work out for him. He's vulnerable. He gets hurt, on the boat. I had forgotten how sort of cut up he was when, I remember the other parts of the scene, the romantic bits and all that kind of stuff. And, it just had, he's got cuts on his chest.
Yeah.
He probably would have been concussed.
He's taking
as well.
a beating.
but yeah, he really took a beating, and yeah, it's sort of I sort of wonder, you can see early seeds of other movies and certain movies, like I mentioned some of the effects that when they were doing the dig did remind me of Poltergeist, and so Indian copy, but I think there's a little bit of Die Hard, not a Superman as Vlad just said, but vulnerable but still resourceful, manages to sort of get himself out of jams. And
I think he's I think there's a long stream of certain kinds of heroes in American film.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got the competent man, James Bond. And yes, I know it's a British character, and you can almost say it's a foreign-made film, but it's still, I think he represents a certain kind of, let's say, Hollywood film character. Maybe that's a better way of describing it. Where, yeah, I bet they never really, even when they lose, they don't really lose. They never really get beaten. It isn't until Casino Royale, like the recent Casino Royale, where you actually see a more human James Bond. But otherwise, there's the competent man, and I don't see John McClane or even Indiana Jones as competent men. They're rough and rugged, but they're almost, you see this kind of hero in a lot of Westerns where they do get beat up, they get dirty, they get dusty. You see the ordeal on their bodies. And I think it's just a great example of that. Like, you see the ordeal. You get that he's, just one of the best lines. It ain't the years, it's the miles.
Yeah.
And in any other movie, cheesy, but that worked in that scene.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And again, another moment where we're taking a moment. We're showing a bit more character and a bit more theme, and Jones is getting yet another choice, right? Hey, what am I really about? What am I really trying to accomplish? Regarding the story, Vlad's got an interesting question here. How much credit, as far as the story goes, does Kasdan deserve, given the first two sequels were paler copies? I thought his work was fabulous. Jeff Boehm on the third movie was simply adequate, for example. Jim, for myself, I think a lot of it's hard to make a good movie, never mind an amazing one. And after a while, you're starting to run out of tricks that are new and fresh.
Yeah.
Like you're constrained by what's happened before, and that limits your ability to really kind of show something new. And yeah, it's hard to be fresh. It's hard to be, and they did try it with a sequel. And I mean, if it'd come out on its own, sequel, prequel, I think it still would have been a fine movie, but nothing we were talking about 40 years later.
Yeah, you can ask this show about this question about the first years of TV shows. It's always that, to my mind, it's always that first season that drags you in, right? It's not the fifth season generally. It's not the seventh season. It's that if you're watching it contemporaneously, it's the season that this show or this story, let's just say story, this particular story, lets you know its worldview, its characters, its shading, its atmosphere. This is the kind of belief it subscribes to. And that, so once that establishes itself, you watch it, you say, hey, I have a favorite new show. It continues, and generally seasons 2 and 3 are good, and then it starts to sort of fall away. And I'm speaking very generally. And you can sort of, for me, you can adapt that to. There's not too many series that I'm still watching after the first 2 or 3 movies. Maybe Star Wars is an outlier. Star Trek, anything with star in the title, I guess. But You know, yeah, I think it might be just the case of, you know, the law of diminishing returns. Yeah, that's you already know who Indy is. You already know the world it's set in, the kinds of things that happen. Remember, if you ever watched the X-Files from the start, it was like, hey, and it did have some noirish ingredients that Eric was talking about earlier. Yeah, they never won. They always lost the evidence. And this stuff's all new. It's like, hey, these guys can't catch a break. This is fantastic. You know,
Yeah.
and that sort of, I can hardly wait for season 2. So I think it's just, a lot of the same kind of things here, is that the start of the starts of stories are always the fresher parts, obviously, by definition, I guess. It's just how, if they can keep that momentum going, I think that's the question.
Yeah, no, I think it is. It's just difficult. You get the advantage of the previous film, but it's almost immediately and equally outweighed by the disadvantages. You know, hey, I don't have to introduce this amazing character. What am I going to do new with them? You know, like, I think they handled that. I think they wanted to, you know, kind of show a story of him before. Maybe this is what we'll do. We'll show it wasn't really an origin story, but I think that's how they were trying to handle that question. But in the third one, they probably did better. They had, hey, let's talk to him as a little boy. Let's talk about the dad. Let's do some shout outs. Like, in many respects, it's such a similar, he's fighting the Nazis again for a, you know, Bible MacGuffin. And yeah, fighting Nazis over a Bible MacGuffin that could win the war.
Yeah.
Or whatever, you know, that he can't get because he's got to make a choice. He's got to make a choice. One, you know, human connection, survival, or the thing, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
I just, I want to answer all the questions in our chat regarding all these plot issues. Adventure magic.
Yeah.
Let's make it a
Comes in
meme.
handy.
Just as we have space magic, there's adventure magic. And I think they used a fair bit of adventure magic at these little moments. Again, the strength of the story is there that you roll right over that cut, and it's only later. What?
How do they get off the island? Yeah.
How do they get off the island with that massive crate? Like, did the Nazis did all the Nazis on that island go up there and they're all killed?
You can get your refills of adventure magic at Canadian Tire this week, just in preparation for Canada Day.
That's right, Mr. Curtis Judd, adventure magic.
Hey. How did Curtis get here? Adventure magic.
Exactly. What did you think of, story-wise, I gotta admit, Jim, I don't think there's a weak part of the story at all. Like, we've discussed, say, some of the potential plot hole. Well, we'll have Eric come back and we'll get into what is a plot hole, what isn't a plot hole. Yeah, I think Eric's going to be a great regular, a potential great regular guest.
We just show up at his house.
Of course, he's watching it now going, wait a second, I'm not doing free teaching. Yeah. I get paid for that, you know.
You can audit his courses for a small fee.
Exactly. But yeah, is there any weakness in the story, like in the actual storytelling? I honestly, I can't think of one. I think the ending is like damn near perfect. It really is properly projected. Like I said, in the very first sequence, the first set piece where he gets out alive, but he doesn't get the thing. and there it is at the end. He doesn't get the thing. His nemesis gets the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just such a great resolution.
I wouldn't say weakness. There's sort of and I think he comes up in the third, although I think it's John Hurd, but the Ravenwood father is I think these days if you did that, they'd have a whole backstory or flashback with Marion's father. Was it Abner Ravenwood? Indy's mentor. And it's all, not everything needs being brought out into the light. I think it's good to have certain elements of the story that are not sort of not touched upon in great detail. I think that sort of makes things interesting. But there is, for him just to say, I was sort of afterwards, I was looking it up. He's just, he died in an avalanche or whatever it happened to be. Yeah. So, I mean, that, again, not a fault. I just sort of noticed the absence. I found it interesting, actually, and I can't remember if there's this angle in the other movies, but Indy. It would have almost
been. It would have almost been better to say nothing about Abner.
Yeah.
You didn't need to. Where's his daughter?
Yeah. I mean, it sort of hints at a previous life, I guess, but and maybe there was a scene cut out.
No, I mean, talk about how he died. Mention him,
yes,
but to talk about how he died, did you need to? Or if you do, it's like, that was some bad business. Period. Walk away. It's the Clone Wars line. It's just that was some bad business. What about Marion? And we never hear about it again. That would be, mwah.
Yeah.
That'd be a chef's kiss moment. But is that the best we can come up with as far as a criticism of the story? Might be, and that ain't much.
Well, the storytelling aspect of it. I really can't think. I enjoyed Suburban Indy. I like seeing him in his smoking jacket. That was sort of a new angle. I don't think the others. To me, he's a guy who lives out of his satchel, right? And he, maybe he has classes occasionally and that kind of thing. But that was kind of cool. I don't. I stumbled upon an article earlier saying that one of the greatest. I didn't get a chance to read it, but one of the greatest expositional scenes was when he met with the two guys over the
government guys.
The government guys, yeah. One of which is Porkins from Star Wars.
Yeah,
that I didn't realize at the time. But I mean, I
almost there. I'm breaking up.
I can't really think of. I mean, it's. I would like to have seen what was, or like to read about what was left on the cutting room floor, but it comes in at under 2 hours, right?
Yeah. It's no wasted scene, no wasted anything, like no fluff, but no. Going back to that exposition scene, and that comes back to how every performer, I'm kind of moving back into craft just briefly, but every performer is, they're there in one scene. They get two scenes. We're taking top men. the G-men there, Colonel whatever and whoever, like even their conflict in the scene where it's like, why are you doing it that way? Okay, calm down there, buddy. We don't need a bad cop. It's just they are giving it their all. Yeah. Like every actor is chosen and delivers. Mm-hmm. And again, the strength of the story is they're given something to do. Yeah. You're going to get the most out of an actor when they don't have to make it up on the spot. It's like, what's my motivation? Why am I... generic cop, blah, blah, blah. No, they're obviously are given the direction, the whatever script they were handed it, or whatever Spielberg said when they're cast. It's just they knew to give the scene what it needed. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And just, there's no scene where you're going, why are we doing this here? Yeah. Who's that? Why is he speaking at all? On this most recent watch, I really appreciated John Even the Reese. Monkey delivered.
Yeah.
Jim, the monkey delivered.
Well, how about Karen Allen? She's got to act for a few scenes, and the monkey's like, she didn't look very happy with that monkey, but he was actually sort of clawing fairly close to her eyes and stuff, and yet like a trooper. So props to her. I was more impressed by her this watch too. And John Rhys Davies, I thought it's almost like those times when Robin Williams is low key and he sort of delivers. And I think John Rhys Davies is actually quieter in this one, and he's got some real moments of I'm worried for you, Indy, and how do we get out of this jam, and like genuine concern on his face, I felt his performance was very genuine as well. But lots going on. It's pretty great to watch again too, and in the summer too is a nice treat.
Yeah. Poor Karen, no heavy boots in the scene with the snakes. Why don't we? Yeah, I don't think there is much. There's not much more to say. Unless we want to hurl some more superlatives at the story itself, the story we saw. Is it time to talk about the meaning?
Well, one thing too is that in terms of how it holds up, we talk about it sort of the totality of the movie, I guess. There was some.
You mean later when we're going to talk about how it holds up, or?
Well, would we talk about? We can save it for then. But in terms, I'm okay. We'll leave it for that. That's good.
You mean when we ask the question, does it hold up, and then you can?
Yeah.
All right. So, here's, I think, and this is where this is the place where I think it is seriously open to criticism. Now, some of it's because it's 40 years ago. Certainly wasn't stuff I ever thought of then. Not a lot of people thought of then. That doesn't mean the issues weren't there. But what do you think was, what's the point of this film? What are we supposed to walk away with this movie? What do you think Spielberg and Lucas and Kasdan were, as they got together, were trying to say?
I almost asked Eric if, I was going to say, so, action adventure, is it a war movie in terms of genre? I also was sort of, I know religious isn't a genre, but I was sort of wondering in a way if this was a religious movie because of, what the arc is, the arc of the title, and what happens ultimately as well. I would ultimately probably say no, because Indy's not changed in that way. Like he doesn't come out right and say
it's not
it.
A spiritual awakening film.
No.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, mumbo jumbo. Like he treats all beliefs almost through an archaeologist's prism, right? He says, okay, this is a bunch of rules that these people believe, and this is a bunch of rules that these people believe. And those can be like Peruvian people or people in Chicago or Connecticut, I think is where his college is.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say it's anything, and it doesn't change him in that way. Like, which is sort of interesting because
I disagree. He does change there because he's at the very end, beginning mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
End, he is don't look. Close your eyes before God.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Jim. Is it a religious movie? No. It is maybe like a more general theme of, are things greater than what we know?
Mm-hmm.
Do we know everything? Are there things greater than ourselves? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Does that fit with what you're trying to say?
Yeah. Or? But I'm just trying to think too, if how he's changed at the end of the movie. Does he believe in? And just as I was sort of thinking aloud here, mumbo jumbo at the start, and don't open your eyes to it. So all of a sudden, that mumbo jumbo has a consequence. But I'm wondering if that sort of affects him. There's not really, aside from that scene, does it change his beliefs? Does it change him at all? He certainly takes the threat of the Ark more seriously. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's. I mean, there's little clues here and there, right? But
Well, I think there's
how does he change? Like, how
there's
does
moments he's tested. And I don't think that is the biggest theme of the film, actually. I think it's more about Indiana Jones and his. I mean, he's still pissed off that they don't get to research the beast, because this time at least he got to bring it back.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, his nemesis had to die, but even then, there's moments where he can choose a life that doesn't involve grasping some tchotchke to sell to the thing so he can have more adventures. That he does, and he does the midpoint of the movie where he's like, but he wants everything I can have. And so he actually gags Karen Allen's character again. He's like, this is gonna F up my deal. Where she's like, get me out of here, Jones. Later. I gotta go raid a tomb.
Yeah.
Baby, I gotta raid a tomb.
I'm a raider.
Yes, one of several. He does, I think he changes, not as much, which actually it's what gives the heft of the third movie. It's because there he really does he's got to make a real choice. He gets atonement with the father, all that stuff. There's a bigger character arc for him. He understands the stakes more. But I think there's still enough of a change. There's kind of he's pissed, but he's like, oh, well, you know what? Hey, there's us. Like, I mean, there's a real romantic moment at the end where he's like, you know what? I got to let that go. Is it a big personal arc? No, but I think it is there. And I think that's one of the themes of the film. Mm-hmm. Are you going to, you've got a real live human being in front of you. That is still just dead stuff. And even actually at the end where he's trying to convince them, it's like, listen, he has changed. I don't believe in mumbo jumbo at the beginning. At the end, he's like, you guys have something that needs to be looked at. It is very dangerous. It's very powerful. Mm. And the G-men are, no, we got people looking into it, guy putting it in a box and storing it somewhere. Yeah, do you know what I mean? So, and I think that's an important thing, an important change he's made. But yes, you're absolutely right. Is it a big, huge change? But I'm not sure. Even that's a point to the film. What else is it trying to say?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's so easy, and these ones are tricky. What was the one that we were looking at, and we were trying to figure out a meaning of it? Was it Cruella?
#adventure magic, Vlad.
I think he actually quotes a Bible verse to answer Vlad's question there.
Yes, in the big exposition scene.
Yeah,
they all looked away.
Yeah, I think he's using some of his, some of that Bible knowledge. But with action adventure, it's so easy to get sort of shanghaied by the action that you don't that it sort of distracts you from minor technical issues like meaning.
I think part of the reason it is such a good movie is that there is a meaning there. There's it does have an emotionally satisfying ending.
Yes.
And that's because in the end there is something, there were philosophical stakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing that sort of that's tricky about these movies, where you have every movie like the Mission Impossible movies, where which I haven't really, I've seen a few of them, but not all of them. But I believe there's a different paramour or potential girlfriend in each one of those, as there is in Indiana Jones. So if the meaning is, should I rekindle with Marion? Can I show her the man I am? Can I open up to Marion? This is probably should be the most important relationship in my life. And then she's not she's not in the next. It's some other chick in the next one. So
Well,
using
but we're
that
not
as,
looking at the next movie. We're looking at,
but in terms of the
like
the
this
long
movie.
picture,
Yeah.
for this picture, they seem to be good at the end with each other, and who knows how long that goes on for. But they've obviously glossed over, because there was quite a lot of hostility there. Amongst all three of them, the father, the daughter, and Indy, they all were sort of sort of drifted apart from each other. I gather.
Well, I think like he left, something happened to Abner. She's stuck in a bar in
Nepal.
Tibet.
Yeah.
Nepal. Thank you. I think and that does bring up when we talk about that relationship, I did read an interview where she was selling that and this is Karen Allen, a recent interview where she was talking about that she was 16 as a character, a crush on him, and then he buggers off. But I'm not sure that's like, it's almost like I always looked at that romance component as the seed to just explain the tension. It was a pretty easy way of just saying, you know what, there was something going on here, but she's pretty pissed about it. And you can also kind of see why, not that they broke up before, but that blow up's because, Indy at the beginning of the movie is about Indy.
Yeah.
At the end of the movie is a little more, it's not just about me having adventures. There are other stuff going on. Although he does, like Belloc says, great, blow it up. And he doesn't blow it up.
Yeah, that was a great move.
It was a great move, and it was also, I think, a great thematic move. You want to see, because that's Belloc's whole line is, we're the same. You're just one little push and you'd be just like me in the shadows. Belloc's a villain who knows who he is. Of course, incapable of change. So of course he suffers for that. He suffers the ultimate consequences for that. Whereas Indy kind of says, yeah, but I don't have to be, pulls back, says, don't look, gets the gizmo, doesn't use it for his own purposes, brings it back to the government. They take it off of him. And, he's like, listen, you don't know what you have here. It should be studied, but he does. He has a moment where he's like, yeah, you're right. Let's go for a drink. Let's get a drink.
Yeah.
Because Karen Allen's, what is her name again?
Marion Ravenwood.
Marion Ravenwood. Thank you. Is an awesome character. It's like, let's have that drink. Cocktails, or and she's obviously, even in Nepal, was able to get some high-end hooch, as Walt Vlad 65 says. What about, though, and then I think this is not meaning in that Kasdan et al. Put it there, but there are messages in this film, unintended, part of the subtext, part of 1981, let's say, and the eras that Lucas, Kasdan, and Spielberg came out of. That idea, and again, Karen Allen was explaining it away as 16, and she had a crush, and at best they had a kiss, and he would have been in his early 20s, as a student. So it's maybe not as horrible as, but the way, like, the world's changed enough.
Yeah.
Now we look at that so differently. The fact that they're able to just kind of pop that in as some spice, just like, and we didn't notice it at the time. It's only much later, decades later, they're like, oh wait, this is where the calculators come out. We go, oh, you were what were you doing? And I appreciate where Karen Allen's coming from because it is such a great character and all these other things. But I think that's a bit of, whoa, you're really inferring a backstory that may not have been supported by the text.
Yeah.
You know, because it seemed like it's a lot more than a kiss. Like there's a lot more went on there.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, the line, and she says it to them on their first meeting in 10 years or whatever, and the line is, "I was a child," and that's
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, and again, you know, thank God they didn't they didn't get into that any deeper, but
yeah,
and that could be 16. Well, I'm not going to excuse it, but I afterwards, after I watched it last night,
I even think that's a bit of maybe not retconning, but a little bit of massaging.
Yeah.
And we don't know. Like we only have the one scene that infers any backstory, like a couple of comments.
Yeah.
Is it something that you sink the whole movie over? I don't think so. I think it's an asterisk, not a
Yeah.
Oh yeah, skip this. It's gross.
I read an essay just afterwards. I think it was when you do a Google search. I was searching about something about Abner, and those sort of pre-formed questions come up, and it was, what did Indy do to Marion? And there was this whole screed. And it was this big essay about how one woman decided to watch them again, and she said, using my calculations, Marion was 11. And I just thought, oh God.
Oh,
I don't know.
Okay, that's going the other end too. Like,
yes, yeah,
you know,
exactly. It's sort of, I don't think so.
It's worthy of an asterisk.
Yes,
it's worthy of an asterisk. But does it bring down the whole movie? No. But it is an interesting thing of what a film could do. What filmmakers could do, you know, where it's like, whoa, age her up, make it more, give it. And the other thing is then all of a sudden the anger can be overcome that way, as opposed to, child, it's like, that's just awful. There's no getting back together later. That's weird. Yeah. Vlad65 says, and I want to comment on this. He's wondering when we get to this, also the shooting of the swordsman, though it made such logical sense to beat him, right? I don't put them on the same level. I think shooting the swordsman is exactly what you do. It's like I think we have all heard the story where Harrison Ford, actually most of the crew was quite sick because they had been drinking local water, and he was awful, and he's like, can I just shoot him? And they're like, yeah, sure, you're sick. And that it worked that well is kind of remarkable. And now anytime anyone does it, it becomes you're doing that Indiana Jones thing. I wonder if it's actually the only time you could effectively do it, because everyone goes, oh, you're doing that Indiana Jones thing. Yeah. Whereas I don't think it had any other message or even an inference. But, and this is my kickoff point, what I do think another meaning of the piece is, and you see it at every stage, it is very chauvinistic as far as, like, right in the initial sequence, what's happening? White guy comes to take the thing, and then Belloc takes it, and if only you spoke this dumb locals language. If you spoke Covitos, you'd be able to, and he uses it. It's obviously still a revered object. Yeah. It has weight, and they're just stealing it. It doesn't matter, you're the American thief, or you're the French thief, or you're selling on their open market. It belongs in a museum. It's like, it belonged, like, they put it behind all that stuff for a reason, because they thought that was the makers of the piece thought that was the best place for it. Who are you and you see it in Tanis when they're ripping off Egyptian stuff. And now, mind you, interesting kind of how did it allegedly get there? It's like, oh, right, the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, the Egyptians of yore, were had a war and took it from the Israelites. Mm-hmm. But it's all stealing, and just because it was stolen by someone else doesn't mean you get to, well, I got to steal it before they steal it. It's like the banker may feel, I don't care what kind of race you guys have. I really just rather the stuff stay right here.
Yeah, that's another thing that I did notice this time that I hadn't before. A couple things, just regarding Indy and Marion's relationship. She's not clothed when they wake up in the morning after he allegedly falls asleep. I hadn't noticed that before as a small child, but anyway. And then that one, what you're specifically talking about, it's the temple itself might have been sort of overgrown and dusty and cobwebby and that sort of thing, but it didn't mean that it was not an active tribe with an active belief system. Yeah, we're given to think of archaeologists as people that get old stuff that may have been buried deep in the soil. But I think it's a bit of a cheaty thing to have this golden idol in this overgrown temple, as if to say, well, it didn't really matter to the local the local tribe.
They didn't even know what they had.
Look how much moss is on that place, Well,
it becomes like an Elgin Marbles thing where it's much safer in our museum than, you Greeks don't know how to take care of your shit. We know how to take care of your stuff. At least the stuff we like.
There's an Australian podcast called something along the lines of "Stuff the English Stole," and so it's I think this is going to be a bigger issue in the years to come. There's various Haida totem poles in European institutions that were potlatch stuff that was elements of the potlatch that were taken without permission of an active peoples, and that's going to be going on for a long time.
And also, it becomes it's like, why are those peoples no longer active? Oh, right, because we stopped that. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, well, you're not using it anymore, are you? Well, you don't let me use anything, you fucking pricks. I like Richard L. Is a good pillagers of the Lost Ark and other stuff.
Yeah.
Genius. But yeah, I think, does this write off the film? No, but this is another big asterisk. It's like, it's very exciting, but it implies that his whole behavior, the whole ethos is okay. Well, he's getting it from museums. It's like, what? And even in the beginning, the Denholm Elliott's character goes, well, I of course we'll pay for it, and of course we won't ask too many questions, which is now something. Now there's international treaties about this stuff, and it's like, you can't prove provenance. If you didn't get that stuff legitimately, it's going back to its original country. Like a lot of stuff is being repatriated back to Iraq that was just outright pillaged, whether by locals because of the chaos after the invasion, or Americans, and mostly on behalf of rich, the rich Christian right that is big on digging up all this stuff because they're forever looking for proof of, the Ark. I know that's I'm being somewhat pejorative to perhaps some American viewers later watching. I can't apologize for that though. Like, I mean, it's what's happening. That kind of thing is awful.
I think in that sense, it might intellectually sort of date the movie, not sort of make it, to answer that earlier question, with the asterisks, you might be able to date it a little bit more just from its point of view.
I'm going to grab a couple of chats, in part because our band, 1/3 of the Balmoral Street Researcher regulars, has got a jet. Walt says, the genre for this is pulp, and 30s pulp is entertaining, but it is politically complicated and challenging. You know what? It does have pulp aspects. I'm not sure pulp, I think anything of a time, and even better when it's referencing an earlier time, it's 40 years later. We're going to have some concerns.
Yeah.
Some concerns. Now, these concerns popped up, I'm sure, in the early 80s. When I was 14, you were 13, who are saying the same thing we're saying now about kind of an imperialist aspect to his behavior, a colonist or a settler's aspect to his behavior. But that said, it's all, any work of art is going to have some challenges 40, 50 years later. But I'd love to have a further conversation on that idea of pulp as a genre, just about right now. And yes, Walt does have a channel, Walt's Flicks Picks. Vlad65 Gamer, give it a look. He's got some great stuff. Again, concentrating on that right now on British flicks. Almost like a 40s, 50s to 8. Well, I think you've come into the 70s, but I don't think you've hit the 80s yet. Anyway, check it out, folks. Great and
it's really good. Yeah.
Walt, thank you so much for popping by. All right, Curtis says, in short, loved the Indiana Jones films when I was young, when they first came out for the thrilling adventure. And absolutely. But there are a lot of cringeworthy moments watching them with my daughter in 2021.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it'd be interesting to hear from you, Curtis, is I would imagine the third is more cringy than the first in some ways. But it'd be interesting to hear how you feel as a father. And Jim, you're a father of a young woman. That's got to ring true to you, eh?
Well, yeah, it's a good segue. Primarily, I think we had a family movie night. By the way, we also watched Blazing Saddles with the kids a few years back. And our kids, who were probably young teens at the time, were like, we're like, oh my, did the Home Alone face through half of it. But so for Raiders of the Lost Ark, my son was probably 8 to 10, I'd say. I think Maya probably fell asleep on the couch. She's a little bit younger. So at the time, he was probably around 8 to 10. And, I said, watch this. This is the best scene. It's the worst thing, watching a movie with an over-enthusiastic parent. So I actually made him, I said, don't close your eyes at the very end before Tot's face melts. I go, this is the best moment in any movie ever. Watch this. You have to watch this. Don't look away. And he watched it, and his face melted, and he was so horrified because he's a sensitive little guy. He was rather angry with me, I think. I was like, what? That's the coolest. Yeah, he was maybe he was. I mean, he wasn't too young, but that was I think a dad no. I sort of learned from that one. But I was just like, oh my God, that was one of my favorite things in all of film as a teenager with a hankering for gore, evidently. But yeah.
So as far as a father of a young woman.
Yeah, we haven't watched that one since. I'd be interested to see what her reaction was. Like I said, she was way too young. I think we may even put her to bed, or she fell asleep on the couch and that kind of thing.
Well, it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to find out, Jim. Has she seen it? On her own, friends and that, and what she thinks of it. It'd be kind of curious to know. What we'll do here, I think, Jim, we're at that point. Unless you got anything else meaning-wise to add, no. I think we're at that point where we should be talking about what's coming up next. why don't I give you the screen then, and
Okay.
why don't you lay on the next film? What are we looking at next week, Jim?
I'm hold on. Distract them. I'm blanking out. I got to check. It's been a crazy day. All right. We are.
What are we looking
that's
at
right.
next week?
That's right. It's July. We are looking at the new Chris Pratt movie, The Tomorrow War. So that's our guy for next week.
Premiering on Prime, no less.
Yes. Yeah. I think I wonder if that's a July 4th
It's
thing.
in
like a 4th of
theater.
July.
And on Prime.
Yeah. Interesting
Um,
combo, but it's their holiday weekend too, of course.
Yeah.
As it is for us. So
Yeah. No, it's gonna be exciting.
July
Oh,
already.
We do have. Wait, there's we got Fever Dreamland Theater. Great to see you here, man.
Hello.
He says, "I love indie." I'm not going to argue with that. Why would I? I love indie. Cannot wait for the new one. Ooh, maybe some. You know what? Actually, I'm going to. If I could make it through Temple of Doom as a kid, then my boys should be able to as well. How old are your boys, FDT? And I believe actually your name is Anthony, but I may be screwing that up. Correct me in the chat, my friend. Jim, let's, what, before we get into our final thoughts and that, and it'd be nice maybe in our final thoughts to maybe ask, to talk about the next one that's coming out, a little bit. But first of all, I think you and I have to answer that question. Does it hold up? Does Raiders of the Lost Ark hold up 40 years later?
As an entertainment, definitely. As a story altogether, even with those little things that we said were sort of asterisk worthy, I still think, yeah, it does hold up. I mean, yeah, time will tell. I think if the pillaging aspect will become a bigger concern in the future, but. Yeah, it's something, it's something that when I watch it with my kids 12 or 15 or whatever years ago, the first time with them, it's something I probably wouldn't have considered at that point. But I do now. So, yeah.
I agree with you. I do. I think it does hold up. I don't think maybe it's because its greatness is higher than Die Hard, or its asterisks are not as big in my brain as Die Hard's. I thought and some of them may even be in Die Hard. Like, I don't think it holds up. And you know what, folks, I'll put somewhere a card here where you could go see why I felt that Die Hard didn't hold up, and you can link. I'll throw up a link somewhere, and you can click on that if you want to see it. I think this holds up. I do think, and I saw this the other day. I was looking at because I wanted to kind of check my memory. I was watching the first half an hour of Aladdin, the cartoon version, the 90s animated version. And I kind of like what they do now, what Disney does at the beginning of a film. It says, listen, just so you know, this film has problems in the way we depict blah, blah, blah. And it really is it's an appropriate way of just saying, listen, we have problems here. And it was wrong. It was wrong now. It's wrong now. It was wrong then. Still, we still think the work is still good, but you should be aware. And I think that even, something like that, an asterisk that can point you in the right direction to make you, to get you to think about some of these elements that are like, okay, we didn't think it was right we somehow were okay with it then. We're not okay with it now. It was wrong then. Here's another way of looking at it, or here's where you can explore why this is bad and still enjoy this remarkable film. I think that's kind of a good thing. It's why I've never really gotten that uptight about, or not as uptight about as others when looking at a historical whatever, and it's, well, that didn't work out that way, and that's wrong, and this is wrong, and they're doing a crime against history. It's like, I don't know, so many films I've watched that I've found are terrible history, but great films, but it got me to look into it. You learned it like a great film can get you to find out if it's accurate. Absolutely. And even if it isn't, I mean, Braveheart is way out of whack, but I probably know more about William Wallace's time because of Braveheart and because of, I should find out more. I've heard an inkling of that's not accurate. Did it really play out that way? It's become such a habit, and we do live in a world where if you want to, and if you have some judgment, some discernment, it's pretty quick to find out a reasonable and maybe not super objective, but more objective source to kind of go, oh, this is how this actually played out. And so I haven't, I mean, I know I ranted about the trial of the Chicago 7, and I stand behind that rant. I still thought it was a good movie. Thought it was worth your time, So there's my ramble on that.
Next week, Birth of a Nation. I'm just kidding.
Ooh, I don't feel good. All right. Okay. Why don't we? I want to come back to Fever Dreamland's comments, but I think this is in the final thoughts region. Sure. He does say, Anthony, it is Anthony. Anthony says, his kids are 3 and 9. Yep, it is Anthony. I may wait a bit to show them the movies. Raiders still holds up for me. Yeah, it's a solid flick. It's even, and I do, like, going back to my quick, when we were talking about the quick review, it's remarkable. This was, like I said, there's like a 10-year period where Hollywood was committing the best, not just the most money, but the best talent to these things that were B flicks and created, I'm going to say masterpieces. I think it might be the first time I've used the word on our show, Jim.
Yeah.
But they really are. There's a few films that came out of that 10-year period where you go, this was remarkable. This is the first time they committed like they did. It's the first time the technology was up to the imagination. Yeah. And they did it right. And it doesn't matter what cheap knockoff, what derivative piece, whatever comes out after that we're all now kind of bored of, I can watch this movie and still get a bit of a, wow, that was amazing. And
committed is a good word for it.
Yeah. It committed at all levels, at the craft level, the story, the perform. Everybody was just there for a movie, So, final thoughts, Mr. Chloboyko.
This generally doesn't enter into our conversations, but I was looking at the Wikipedia entry as you do, and the
beginning and sometimes middle and end of all our research.
Now, if things are true, they were looking at, well, everyone knows that Tom Selleck was might have been Indy Jones. That's whatever. The one that interested me the most, though, that I saw was Taut, the bad guy with the the male pattern baldness and the black hat and the leather
And the
coat
great
with
joke with the folding.
yes, the nunchucks coat hanger.
Of
That was pretty. There's a couple wugga wugga moments in the movie. Another one is when the guy was running after Marion in the market and ran into a building after her, and all you hear is, and obviously he's cartoon like gotten bonked on the head and he falls back behind. So there's some decent humor.
Oh, it's with a frying pan. Like
yes,
this is like to lean into the caricature of a woman with a frying pan. Cranking up. Well, at the same time, not being one of the areas where I'm like, let the middle-aged white guy say, I didn't find that offensive at all. But I don't remember even contemporaries or anyone at the time said, that's so offensive. Like, they leaned into the gag and owned it. Karen Allen leaned into the gag and owned it. Yeah. But in terms of casting, I was looking at it, and they said Klaus Kinski for Tot, and I thought, ooh, that would have been now. And instead, apparently, he did a film called Venom instead because it offered him more money. And he might have overacted, he might have whatever. But I thought that was kind of. Now, having said that, it actually conjures an interesting image.
It does. Ronald Lacey, who I'm not incredibly, he's passed on, but I'm not super familiar with a lot of things he's done. He's an English actor. He did a great job, and I still remember him. And I still, I still go, oh, you bad guy. Like, he still makes me sort of clench my fists and oh, you're a bad piece of business, So he did a great job. But just occasionally you read something about casting and you think, oh, that would be kind of interesting. But what do you think, Jim? And I brought up, well, first of all, I wanted to bring up for Richard L's comment again. I think the most cringeworthy has to be Temple of Doom. Yeah, it has a lot of the almost, well, let's just put someone in blackface and really just run the table with every kind of there's a lot of racist stereotypes in that film. I think that's a good note, Richard. Great note. But let's get back to Anthony's thing about how he's looking forward to the next film. Cannot wait for the new one. How are you feeling? How are you feeling about the next film? I think I've only seen. This is interesting. I think I've only seen it twice, and I believe somewhere in the house I actually got a copy of the fourth movie. My friend Darren, the same one that abandoned me in the North Star movie theater in 1981, actually bought me for my birthday one year a copy of the fourth one. So I don't remember tons about it.
Terrible film.
Yeah, and a lot of set pieces and a lot of, it didn't feel as organic as this one, if you can call it.
And what a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
When it came out, even when it was being developed, it's like you could have made the G-men the bad guys. The Russians were red herring. No. Ah, well.
I mean, I should revisit it just to be familiar. So having said that, I know this isn't connected. I mean, the fourth one was a long time ago. There may be different people involved. Sort of almost, it sounds weird for a fifth in a series of movies, but it's almost like they're starting with a fresh slate. So what's it going to be about? Is it going to be about succession? Is it going to be about, because they sort of tried that one.
Except they didn't, did they?
Yeah. Mutt, was that was that the character's name? Yeah. I mean, it's sort of, we'll have to see where they go with it. You just hope that you get some decent crafts people, working at the story. Would it be an ending? Would it be,
Yeah.
We-
For myself, I'm nervous. Like,
Yeah.
There's some of the news stories. He got injured on the film. Any other thing would be like, why is a guy in his 80s, he's 80 years old now,
Is he?
oh, he got hurt. Like, this is not a surprise. I don't mean it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's not a surprise. It's like, Harrison Ford got hurt on a, well, yeah, that's no shit he's going to get hurt. Why is he, and this was the other missed opportunity of number 4, was a real handoff. I thought, well, when you heard the hype, and then even as I was watching the movie, oh, maybe no, he's insisting at the time in his 60s or 70s, like when did it come out? He's insisting he's still an action star. And it's like, come on. There is something to be said for, be classy. Cary Grant was like, listen, I feel creepy being this old man. Like, they were still offering him roles where he had a romantic involvement with women, 19, 20, 21. And he's like, yeah, I feel like a creepy old man. This is crazy. So yeah, hand it off.
Yeah.
So are they going to do that? I don't know. At least he was willing to die in Star Wars, so maybe he will. Like,
that's the other.
I am concerned.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was 2008, so that would have been.
Thank you. So 12 years ago, so he'd been 68. The 68-year-old action star still, it's gonna, and that's the other thing I'm concerned with is, what did we see in The Irishman? You see CGI trying to, and I know they're not trying to de-age him or anything, but you are going to see somebody moving as an 80-year-old would. Probably a fit 80-year-old, but you are gonna know that he is not. So we better be talking about a lot of miles. Like one of those, wow, I can't believe you flipped the meter. I am concerned. I'm taking some hope from Anthony here. It's like, can't wait for the new one, and maybe I should have a little more openness. It's not like these guys are completely unsusceptible, unaffected by criticism, especially the money kind. Wow, this thing stunk. This did not make a lot of money. It's why it's taken 12 years to make another one.
It might behoove them to take the Futurama path and just have his head in a jar with a robot body or something to that effect. But and the other complicating factor is that not a lot of actors get to play multiple characters through to the end. So he's already done Han Solo, right? Yeah. And he's already done, and he's continuing with Indy. And
you too, Anthony. Thanks for popping in.
Yeah, you bet. Nice meeting you on the chat. But so and of course these things don't inform each other. But there's sort of, when you're talking about an actor and a character in their 80s, there's not a lot of places to go with that. I mean, he can develop a new hobby, sure, but where, talking about thematically, where are you going to go with that? Rebirth,
imparting wisdom to the next generation. A handoff for sakes. Not
maybe they'll do it right this time.
Yeah. I do want to. Katie Fowler says apparently Sean Young was also considered for the movie. There's another one a la Klaus Kinski, where a lot of times when I hear these things, I'm like, that person so owned the role, I don't want to think about, I don't want to hear of all the other options. Yeah. But I got to admit, Karen Allen nailed it. There'll always be a Karen Allen in my mind. But I got to admit, Sean Young, it would have a different energy. Does not mean it would be any less a film. But Jim, anything else you want to add before we wrap it up? We're coming up up to 3 hours, three quality packed hours. So, but 3 hours nonetheless, and we haven't done that in a while. So,
I think we're good. I should maybe I'll watch some of the other movies, or maybe we save them, watch them for the show over the course of the summer. But yeah, I haven't watched 2 or 3 in a long time. So,
well, maybe we'll. You know what? I agree with. Well, it's, and maybe it'll be something to look at sometime from now. Yeah. What are the movies we gave asterisks to versus the movies we went ick? Especially me, who seems to have a bigger and more extreme opinions on this. How objective have I been on applying this thing? That said, I got to admit, maybe we do like a twofer for number 2 and number 3. To dedicate a whole show to, to number 2, where it's like, I remember, and I think I'd be like, oh, I don't want to watch.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
terrible.
And
they're not going anywhere. So that's
But I do like the idea, and maybe as we run up closer to the 5th one coming out.
Yeah.
Or we dedicate a show to the 2 crappy ones, just for the laughs.
2 and 4, or whatever. Yeah.
All right. Okay, Jim, I think it's time to say goodbye to our company, our wonderful chat, the best chat on the internet. That cool with you?
You bet. Go Habs.
All right.
See you later, folks.
Go. All right, again, thanks so much for coming by, everybody. Really appreciate it. You're the best chat on the internet. Katie, thank you very much. Being 1/3 of the Balmoral Street Research Irregulars and bringing your A game to the chat. Thank you so much. Richard L., ditto for you. Anthony, if you're still here, thanks for popping in. If you're not, thanks for popping in. Walt, I know he had to go, but in case he comes back to catch the rest of the show, thank you, baby. Richard L., thank you very much. Curtis Judd, thanks for popping by. Really appreciate that, man. Another great YouTuber on the technical side of things. Check out his intrepid little channel with his 187,000 subscribers or something.
He'll make it one day.
Yeah, exactly. I think he literally, maybe it's 160 something. It's like he has literally 100,000. He's got 1,000 more than we do, 1,000 times. 1, 2, 3 orders of magnitude larger. Richard, thank you again for one of the greatest alternate titles. And I think I got everyone, eh?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
and all the future viewers.
And everyone else who comes by and leaves a comment later on. Thank you very, very much. We have what else we got? Richard says, thanks, guys. Great show. It was a great show, wasn't it, Jim?
Yeah.
And let's one more shout out to our wonderful guest, Eric Williams. Again, he's got I'll look at that up, but check him out on if you're already an Audible subscriber. He's got some originals on there. I like that idea of little chunks and that explaining movies. I think he's going to be willing to come back. I'm pretty confident we will have him back. And so maybe we'll think of another, get some more, do a bit better in promoting them and get some questions from you beforehand, because he is the subject matter expert. He has had produced work. He's written professionally, like screen written professionally. He is an instructor. Yeah, it'd be let's shamelessly exploit his willingness to come on our show.
Absolutely.
All right. I think that's about it. Jim, I'll see you in the green room. I'm going to bring up the tunes. I am going to take the chat off. Take the chat overlay off. And yeah, everybody, thank you all so very, very much for joining us. Remember, next week we're going to be looking at The Tomorrow War. It'll be out in theaters. It's also on Prime, Amazon Prime. So check it out and then come back next week, next Sunday, 9:30. I believe it's July 2nd, Sunday, 9:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time. Of course, Universal Coordinated Time -5. And what else is there to say? I think that's about it. Okay. Bye-bye.